over Yasuke and whether Ubisoft's new Assassin's Creed Shadows game blatantly disrespect Japanese culture or is just a fun, whimsical game with no meaning to it, has taken another escalation as yet another Japanese historian has come out with their thoughts on Yasuke. Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idol, and yes, Japanese historian Yuichi Goza speculates that Yasuke was simply Oda Nobunaga's bodyguard and entertainer rather than a samurai as he's depicted in Assassin's Creed Shadows. And to be fair, I could buy this. One, because historically speaking, it's actually very much believed that, first of all, Yasuke wasn't a slave. He was actually a mercenary, and that's why he was with the Jesuits. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know. But that is what a lot of historical speculation states. But it also makes sense because, yeah, if I was a tiny little Asian dude and some big Jap black guy came into my possession, homie would make kind of the perfect bodyguard around a bunch of other tiny Asians. I'm just saying. So we're going to get into this article. Before we do, hit that subscribe button. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. And Japanese historian Yuichi Goza speculates that Yasuke was not a samurai as video game developer Ubisoft has claimed, but was rather just Oda Nobunaga's bodyguard and entertainer. Now look, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I don't care about the whether he was a samurai or not argument, because at the end of the day, that's sort of a colloquial thing. That's sort of just a trick of the words. Retainer, watch any anime, talk to any Japanese person. Retainer, they were and weren't samurai. They're more like the equivalent of squires to knights. The terms were kind of used interchangeably, but there was still always one, like, head honcho samurai at the top of the paragon, just how you had, you know, your knight, and then he had some subjects underneath him, again, like squires and whatnot. Whether Yasuke was a samurai or not means less than nothing to me, because we know for sure he was there for like a year and a half or whatever. Like his history, his story doesn't really matter. What does matter to me is whether or not this is a cultural slap in the face to Japan, how Japan is handling this, and why the French company ran by white people, Ubisoft, is not taking this country's thoughts. It is why they're appropriating their culture in such a way after so many years, nigh on over a decade, about how cultural appropriation is such a bad thing. Why not listen to the Asians when they say our culture is being affronted? Or is it because Asians are effectively white adjacent and you don't really care about their opinions? See, that's the part that matters to me, not really whether or not he was a samurai, considering it is a video game, it's fiction, I couldn't care less. No, it's the reasoning, it's how you justify your blatantly racist decisions. That's what I'm interested in. So yeah, I'm very curious as to what the Japanese historian has to say. In an interview with the Japanese website, the Senkai Shimbun, with translation via Deep L, Goza, who is a faculty member of the International Research Center for Japanese Studies, focusing on Japanese medieval history and author of What is a Samurai, was asked what kind of person was Yasuke and was he a samurai or not. Okay, I mean, the dude did write a book called What is Samurai? What is a Samurai? I'd make an appeal to credentialism here, but there was also that one historian that, wrote the entire book about Yasuke that turned out to be basically fanfic. So we can't just assume, we can't be picky and choosy here and be like, see, this guy wrote a book, he must know what he's talking about. Yeah, the other guy wrote a book too. And we've spent the last 2 months blatantly making fun of it to the point where we've kind of ran this guy's political career, or I'm sorry, his academic career into the ground. Goza responded, there are very few historical records about Yasuke, so it is difficult to say. The history of Yasuke has not been the subject of much research. You mean to tell me that Japanese researching the black dude hasn't been done a lot? That Asians saying, hey, look at this novelty? We don't care too much about it beyond fictional stories? Yeah, that kind of checks out. In part because the history of personalities is not the mainstream of historical studies. In the 15-volume Nobunaga Koki, the collection of Sonkei Kakubunko, which is one of the biographies of Nobunaga Koki, the chronicle of Nobunaga's life, there's a description of Nobunaga giving Yasuke a sword and a house, indicating that he treated him as a samurai. Again, retainers were still, in some instances, referred to as samurai. It is literally just a term. It is a lesser samurai. I'm going to get flamed in the comments for that, but it is what it is. Look, language changes, it evolves. Our language works the same thing. We say fire now to mean cool, to mean awesome. I don't know how retainer was used back then, but nowadays, that is very much how the Japanese use it, even when talking about just random pop culture events that use, like samurai as a basis, for example. So, just throwing that out there. Hate me in the comments all you want. taught to any Japanese person. This isn't a defense of Yasuke. I think the thing is stupid. However, this is something that only appears in the biography among the dozens of manuscripts of the Nobunaga Chronicle, and we cannot deny the possibility that this was added later with when the manuscript was transcribed. Goza continued, also, even if he was a samurai, he may have been a formality. For example, in the Edo period, feudal lords were fond of a sumo, had their own personal wrestlers. Formerly, they were treated as vassals or samurai and allowed to wear a sword, but even if war broke out, it was not expected the feudal lords would allow their retainers to fight on the battlefield. And that is basically what I'm getting at. Think of this as basically when the Queen of England knighted Sting. Look, Sting's a pretty cool musician. I like Message in a Bottle as much as anybody else. But when World War III breaks out between Russia, Ukraine, Taiwan, China, Iran, Palestine, and Israel, and America is of course going to have their fingers in every pie, Sting ain't who I'm going to. Sir Elton John is not going to be the person I want on the front lines. I'm just saying. When asked about the magnificent armor that Ubisoft depicts Yasuke wearing in Assassin's Creed Shadows and what position he actually held under Nobunaga, Goza responded, the Japanese people around Nobunaga were very surprised by Yasuke's dark skin and seemed to be interested in it. To be fair, that is also not unheard of. When Lewis and Clark made their famous expedition out west and they encountered the savages, those dirty Indians, they had a slave with them. Clark had a slave named York. The Indians were fucking fascinated by York. I mean, a lot of cultures who've never seen black people before lay their eyes on some jacked 6'2" dude darker than hell at night. All of a sudden, the oohs and the ahs are abound. In a sense, it was a show. Having a black man like Yasuke so close to him would attract attention and, in a sense, show off Nobunaga's power. In a sense, Nobunaga could show off his power. Therefore, I believe the most important purpose was to show off to everyone, he relayed. In the Jesuit historical records, it is written that Yasuke was powerful and could do a few tricks. I believe that he was, in fact, Nobunaga's bodyguard and entertainer. Now, again, this historian just says, I believe this. He's not trying to lay it down as if it were fact. That is the conclusions that he's drawn from his also admitted minimal study, which is more than can be said for homie that tried to write a fanfic about Yasuke. White guy, by the way. White guy working in Japan who tried to write a fanfic about Yasuke, and lo and behold has been since discredited a million times over by fucking YouTubers of all people. So, yeah, I at least respect that he's saying, I believe this, I believe that, but we don't actually know because that is not what the Japanese history tends to focus on. We're more bigger picture type of folk. He then declared he was not the samurai warrior the Westerners imagined him to be. Ay. Don't be lumping us all together like that, good sir, slaying one enemy after another. Even if he did fight, he did not command his men, but worked as a single combatant. Furthermore, Goza shared his thoughts on the backlash to Assassin's Creed Shadows that includes a petition calling for Ubisoft to cease production of the game. The petition currently has over 102,000 signatures. I'm actually really curious what he has to say about this petition because, look, as a historian, yeah, you want the truth out there, you want the history out there, but also, it is a fucking video game. Like, I really don't care. I'm more interested, how's it gonna perform? How's the gameplay? What's the music, the soundtrack, the voice acting, the character models? Is the story well written? All of that, to me, makes, takes a higher priority on an individual cases for this being a game. Now, yes, there's the cultural degradation that's come from the woke left, just slapping black people in every game and saying, all right, there's our shield against criticism, because if you criticize the game, that means you're a racist, and that's absolutely what Ubisoft is doing. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. We know that's the case, but to somebody outside the culture war, somebody that's just a historian for the Japanese academic society, he might offer something really interesting. So, Goza said, I understand that many people think that if you want to respect the samurai culture, the main character should be a Japanese samurai, especially since the story is based on a real person. It would be more natural to have a famous swordsman or samurai such as Miyamoto Musashi as the main character, rather than a black man named Yasuke, whose actual character is not known. He continued, if Yasuke, who may or may not have been a samurai, is made to be a representative of the samurai, it would be like taking something away from the Japanese samurai culture. Therefore, I think it is natural that some Japanese and foreign people would react with discomfort and dissatisfaction when they hear the word cultural theft being used in the film. Even if Yasuke were to appear in the game, it should have been in the form of a Japanese samurai as the main character and Yasuke as well. So what he's saying here, because that was very oddly worded. I think it's a translation thing. Yasuke should have been in the game as a side character and then had an actual Japanese samurai as the main character. Gozo was then asked about the various forms of media aside from video games, including movies, TVs, novels, adopting stories that are contrary to historical facts, and what his thoughts are on these. He responded, "I think it's a matter of degree. For example, there's a rare theory that Minamoto no Yashitsune did not die in Hiraizumi, but went to be the continent and became Genghis Khan. That theory is mainly popular before the war, but it was denied by historians at the time as impossible. If a game in which Yoshitsune became Genghis Khan and fought in that game were to be sent out to the world, I think it would still be problematic, even if it were labeled as this game is fiction," Gozo explained. "Especially Mongolians would be angry because Genghis Khan is the greatest hero of Mongolia. Of course, I don't think that all creative works based on history can be based on historical facts, but especially when they are put out in the world, I think there should be consideration for the fact that it could become a diplomatic issue if the game is put out in a way that hurts the pride or people in other countries," he asserted. That's a real interesting take, because I can't say I disagree. He seems a bit rigid, partly because, well, he's Japanese, but also partly because he's a historian. I mean, the two together just make for what seems to be a very rigid combo, and as long, in my opinion, as you are blatantly honest out the gate, this is a work of historical fiction. I mean, Wolfenstein has been around for like 3 decades now, very clearly historical fiction. Then yeah, I don't see a problem, I don't care. The problem is when you try and use historical fiction as a shield, as a guise, to push a message. Okay, we know what you're doing. You're either making some historical fiction because you like the idea of an alternate universe, alternate history story, and you want to explore that, or you're making something historical fiction so that you can throw in whatever modern-day woke leftist DEI-based buzzwords and ideologies that you can put into a video game. And that, the latter, is what Ubisoft is doing here. So, again, I think he's too rigid, but also he definitely makes a point, especially when you compare it to modern day. Gozo then contrasted Assassin's Creed Shadows to the recent remake of Shogun that aired on FX. As a contrasting example, I would like to cite the American drama Shogun remake with Hiroyuki Sanada in the lead role. The main character is modeled on Tokugawa Ieyasu. Although his name has been changed, the events leading up to the Battle of Sekigahara have been altered considerably, and the historical background, including buildings, is a bit suspect. But when I watched it, I felt the understanding and respect for Japanese history. He continued, "An Englishman modeled after William Adams, Anji Miura, washes ashore in Japan and teaches the protagonist how to move a ship and use a cannon, and so on. That alone would suggest that a white man with an advanced civilization is teaching things to stupid colored people, but this is not the case. The Englishman is at first confused and repulsed, but gradually becomes impressed by the proud way of life of the Japanese samurai, and in the process of understanding and respecting them is depicted. It's not a one-way relationship, but a story of mutual understanding. There's respect for other cultures at the roots," which is why The Last Samurai is a beloved film, because that is effectively the exact same damn thing. Everyone were trying to make these false, phony, bogus comparisons between Assassin's Creed Shadows and The Last Samurai. Oh, if you're mad at this, you should also be mad at this. Well, no. The Last Samurai, at the end of the day, first of all, Tom Cruise ain't The Last Samurai, as everyone has pointed out who's seen those memes, but also is exactly what is being described here. It is a story of mutual respect and understanding. I think this is an important aspect of fiction based on history. If you depict the history and culture of a foreign country, I think you had a proper understanding of those basic aspects and paid respect to them, problems like this would not have occurred. It appears clear that Gozo does not believe that Ubisoft in their game Assassin's Creed Shadows has been respectful to the Japanese history and culture, and it's not hard to figure out why, given Ubisoft was attempting to market this game as historical. I don't like that Part Place is running with that narrative. I'm sorry, Assassin's Creed has always been historical fiction. They've always marketed it as such. They did keep saying, the historical figure Yasuke, and yeah, okay, that's misleading, but he is a historical figure. He's just very, very, very minor. They're building him up to be much more than he is, and if that's what you mean, okay, fair enough. But I feel like at this point, Part Place is playing the same kind of word games the woke left plays, and I would prefer some actual transparency. In an interview with Xbox Wire, game director Charles Benoit detailed, "We're at the end of Sengoku era and a turning point in Japan." I don't care about what he had to say. The fact of the matter is, we had a Japanese historian give his thoughts, give his views, give his opinions, and yeah, he ain't a fan. He definitely does not exactly value Yasuke, the idea of Yasuke in terms of what it means for Japanese history, and he certainly doesn't value the idea of how Assassin's Creed Shadows is playing with Japanese history, and understandably so, both, again, as a historian and as a Japanese man. So yes, you can make all the complaints you want in the comment section down below. You can say whatever you want on X about how we're just a bunch of racist, misogynistic, Nazi incels. But this is a Japanese cultural issue, and they are making their displeasure known. Yes, do you have a lot of white dudes typing in Japanese on X and making videos? I'm sure that's happening. I couldn't care less. I want to hear from the actual Japanese folk and get their thoughts on it. And when their thoughts are, this is fucked up, look, I'm gonna trust them when they say this is fucked up. Like I don't know, I thought you wanted us to believe these people of color when they're coming at us with their cultural strifes. Or does it only matter when it's Western and black or Latino? It doesn't really matter if it's Asian or Jewish or if it's happening in a different hemisphere. That's the vibe you woke leftists are giving off. But those are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Or let me know on X where you can find me at Bolt the Word. And please do subscribe. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. Not always about the video game industry and what's going on, but anime, movies, music, Magic the Gathering, you name it. Check me out on Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon. And become a member for $4.99 a month. You can join the Discord. Choose the articles I go over on a day-to-day basis. Choose the videos I react to on my Friday night live streams, and of course, get involved with over 80 other vital idols. We're a bright, beautiful, glowing, vibrant community that I cannot wait to grow even further, because we do care about diversity, but only one kind of diversity of thought. So if that's interesting to you, hit subscribe, join the Discord, and until next time, it is all here in the Nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.